For more on this, we are joined on the line by DA Shadow Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Kevin Malm. Thank you so much for joining us, and good morning, Mr. Malm.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. Now, Mr. Malman, with the motion of no confidence against the municipalities that did invest with VBS Bank, can you tell us what prompted the DA to move to lodge these motions of no confidence?
So there's several reasons why we've done this. First of all, we've taken action against the municipal officials, namely the municipal managers and the chief financial officers, in the form of motions in those councils asking for them to be suspended, for an investigation to be conducted, and for the necessary disciplinary processes to proceed. That's all well and good, but we also need to hold the political parties and the political appointees politically accountable. In other words, if a mayor is overseeing the deposits of money illegally into BBS, which, as you've quite rightly identified, was a fraud, and it was basically a Ponzi scheme, a pyramid scheme to enrich a connected few, then those mayors need to be held politically accountable, and that's what a motion of no confidence is.
Now, before we just expand on what you've just said about the political appointees, now, how are the rollouts of these motions? How are they? Can you just explain? Because, I mean, you've got Gauteng, you've got your Limpopo, you've got the Northwest. Do they have different applications, or do they come out? So how are they expected to take place, the vote of no confidence?
What will happen is that our councillors in the respective municipalities will lodge the motion of no confidence with the speaker of that municipality, and then the speaker will place the motion on the order paper, which means that it will then come up at a council meeting at some date in the near future. It will be debated and voted on, and if the motion succeeds, then the mayor will be removed from office.
Now, when you mentioned, I mean, you said that this is a political issue as well, with the political appointees. I mean, one would say that is this maybe purely based on politics when it comes to holding these municipalities accountable?
To a certain extent, yes. But I think it's important to note that you can't just brush this under the carpet. You can't brush a fraud of this scale and magnitude under the carpet and pretend it didn't exist. You know, there's a saying that says that all that is required for evil to flourish is for good men to do nothing. And if we do that, we are basically doing nothing. So we have to stand up and be counted on. Even if we fail at these motions of no confidence, it is the right thing to do. And hopefully enough of the other political parties, enough members of other political parties will see that and will join with us in these motions and will remove these mayors from office.
Now, Mr. Malm, it seems as if the DA certainly wants something done. So, but what are the expectations? What are you hoping to achieve from these motions? Do you want them to be terminated, or do you want maybe the municipalities to repay the money?
Look, it's unlikely that the municipalities will ever recover the money, and we're talking hundreds of millions of rands. For example, Vembe District Municipality, it's somewhere in the region of 300 million rand. Greater Guyana, 150 million rand. So they're never going to recover the money that was deposited with VBS. That's the first point. The second is that we need to make sure that these mayors, these politicians realize the consequences of their actions and that they are held accountable for those actions. And that, so there must be an understanding. One of the biggest problems that we see in South Africa, and the Auditor General has raised this time and time again, is a lack of consequence management. That people don't feel that there are any consequences for wrongdoing, and so they get away with it, and other people then do it. They say, "Oh, somebody else got away with it, so I'll try it and see if I can get away with it too." And we must make sure that doesn't happen.
Do you think, Mr. Malham, maybe when the municipalities then invested in this bank, they were not aware of, one, the implications, and two, the fact that the VBS Bank had been in a fraudulent case as well? And also, I mean, they stated the reasons why they decided to, have they stated the reasons why they invested with VBS Bank?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that when we appoint municipal managers and chief financial officers, one of the things that they are required to do is have an understanding of the legislation that affects municipalities, and very specifically the Municipal Financial Management Act. Now, the MFMA in Section 7, subsection 3, says that a municipality may not deposit money in any institution that is not a registered commercial bank. In other words, a bank registered in terms of the Banks Act. Mutual banks are registered in terms of the Mutual Banks Act, which is a separate piece of legislation. So it was, at that point, completely irregular, illegal for them to deposit money with VBS. Equally, there are national treasury regulations on how municipalities should go about depositing their funds with various financial institutions. So they should be aware of that. Then National Treasury also sent out a circular to all these municipalities that had deposited and said, recover your money, stop depositing this money with VBS. It's not right, it's not legal. They didn't comply. They didn't recover the money, and they carried on depositing money. So there was clearly a distinct intent to deposit money with VBS, and we believe that there was a malicious intent to prop up this bank so that money could be channeled towards the African National Congress, given the number of ANC officials who are implicated in facilitating these deals with municipalities.
But now, I know you just said, Mr. Malham, that the money cannot be recovered. But now, what about the plan? What steps can be taken? Because, I mean, it was said that the Minister of Cooperative Governance has said that they should now start looking at steps to recover the money. And we know that municipalities and a lot of local municipalities are suffering, are in dire state right now financially. So do you think there are steps where they can recover the money, even if it's not of monetary value, but in maybe investments or any other way?
Well, the first thing to realize is that the municipalities that are affected here are amongst the worst run and poorest municipalities in South Africa. They are amongst the most dysfunctional municipalities in South Africa. And so their financial systems and their finances are in a very unhealthy state to begin with. The second thing is that the South African Reserve Bank, the registrar of banks, Mr. Kuben Naidu, as well as the curator of VBS, have indicated that it is unlikely that they will recover anywhere near the full amount, and I believe it's unlikely that they will recover any of the money that has been deposited with VBS. Now, the third thing is that the minister has, as you have rightly pointed out, indicated that these municipalities should come up with a recovery plan or some kind of strategy to address the issue. But the reality is that they've taken a significant chunk of their annual revenue and put it in a place that they're not going to recover anytime soon, certainly not within the next year or so. So that means that those municipalities, which are not going to receive a bailout from National Treasury or the provincial treasuries, will be in a difficult position to deliver services to the residents of their municipality. So those people are going to suffer because of the decisions that were taken by certain politicians and certain municipal officials.
Now, Mr. Malham, before we let you go, now you've mentioned that, I mean, you've got your mayors and your councillors as well as municipal managers that are appointed to ensure that when such investments are made, that a thorough investigation is done, as you said, with banks that are registered under the Commercial Act. So now, when we look at the Treasury, they told them not to go ahead with the investment, but they did so. Should there be any legal, consequences to that, to those specific individuals who are involved?
Absolutely. First of all, the criminal charges that we have laid against the municipal managers and chief financial officers relate specifically to this. And that is why we believe that there should be consequences for those people. Now, those are currently with the South African Police Service, and I believe it will be handled by the commercial branch of the SAPS. And when they've gathered all the evidence, and they believe that they have a case to answer to, then the docket will be handed over to the National Prosecuting Authority to prosecute to the full extent of the law.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kevin Malham. That was Mr. Kevin Malham, who's the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Shadow Minister for the DA.